Hi, I'm Cedric. Welcome back to the SleepStory Collective. It's a real comfort to have you here tonight. Wherever you are listening from, whether you are already beneath the covers, easing into your pillow, resting into a favorite chair, or simply trying to let the day loosen its grip, I'm glad you made it here. At the SleepStory Collective, we only have one mission: to help you unwind, to help everything in you soften, to help you ease quietly and gently into sleep. So before we begin, let yourself arrive. Not all at once, not perfectly, just a little more with each slow breath. Let the room be as it is. Let the air around you be enough. Let the bed hold what it is already holding. Let the pillow take the weight of your head. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let the tiny muscles around your eyes stop working so hard. There is nowhere you need to be for a while. No message waiting for your answer. No task requiring your attention. No problem demanding a solution before morning. The day has had its turn. This time belongs to rest. And if your thoughts are still moving, that is all right. They do not need to stop at once. They do not need to vanish. They can simply drift a little farther away, a little slower, a little softer, like pale paper lanterns moving across still water in the dark. Take a slow breath in and let it go. Another slow breath in and let that one go too. And one more, easy, unforced, gentle. Tonight, we are going somewhere quiet, somewhere the earth smells of clay after evening rain, somewhere shelves are lined with bowls and cups and vases cooling in lamplight, somewhere windows glow honey gold against the blue of night, somewhere soft dust from the sky settles on dark fields and old roofs and sleeping gardens. Somewhere careful hands shape stillness into beautiful things. This is not a hurried place. Nothing there is made in a rush. Nothing there is dragged into being by strain. Everything is turned and shaped and warmed and waited for. And that is good. Because tonight, we are not looking for urgency. We are looking for gentleness, for slowness, for a story you do not need to chase, only a story willing to carry you. So if sleep comes early, let it come. If the details blur around the edges, let them blur. If a few words drift past unheard, let them pass. You do not need to keep hold of every sentence. You do not need to stay alert. You only need to rest here. Imagine for a moment that the day is something you can set down, not throw away, not solve, only set down. Like a coat on the back of a chair, like shoes by the door, like a satchel unshouldered at last. And now imagine that the mind too can be set down in pieces. The busiest part first, then the tightest part, then the part still replaying old conversations, then the part trying to predict tomorrow. One by one, without force, without argument, just set them beside the bed for now. You can pick them up again in the morning if you need them, but you may find that by then, you no longer need them in quite the same way. Tonight, there is only this voice, this moment, this soft hour, and a path opening quietly before you. It winds through a sleeping village, past shuttered windows and herb gardens and low stone walls still holding the memory of the day's warmth, past a small yard where rainwater sits in old terracotta bowls, past a workshop where a lamp still burns behind fogged glass, past a kiln with a round red heart of heat within it, past shelves where little unfinished moons wait on linen cloths to dry. In that place, no one is counting success by speed. No one is trying to do 10 things at once. No one is proving anything. There is only the old wisdom of making something carefully, something shaped by hand, something quiet enough to belong to the night. And perhaps your own thoughts can learn from that. Perhaps they too can be turned more slowly. Perhaps they too can be held without pressure. Perhaps what feels rough and formless can soften a little under warm hands and patient attention. For now, you do not need to understand any of it. You only need to sink a little deeper, to breathe a little slower, to let the weight of yourself be carried. If there is any tightness still in you, let it melt by degrees. From the forehead, from the mouth, from the neck, from the chest, from the belly, from the hands, from the legs, from the feet, as though each part of you is being invited, one at a time, into rest. And if sleep has already begun to hover near you, at the edges, in the heaviness of your eyelids, or the pleasant slowing of your thoughts, that is more than welcome. You do not need to resist it. You do not need to stay with me all the way. The story will go on without requiring anything from you. And if you drift before the ending, then let the ending find you in sleep. Tonight's story is called The Potter Who Crafts Moons from Stardust. And now, our story begins. It begins at the hour when evening has fully settled, but night has not yet deepened into its darkest blue. The village lies in that tender middle place. Shops are closed, curtains are drawn. A few kitchen windows still glow. A few gardens still breathe out the warmth they kept from the day. And above the roofs, the sky holds the faintest silver scatter of early stars. The lane beneath your feet is damp from a passing shower. Not heavy rain, only the sort that arrives softly and leaves the cobbles clean and dark and shining. The air smells of wet stone, rosemary, chimney smoke, and earth. Somewhere nearby, rainwater still drips from a gutter into a barrel with a slow, hollow sound. Everything feels rinsed. Everything feels quieter than it did an hour before. You are walking uphill through the oldest part of the village. Here the cottages lean a little toward one another, as though they have spent so many winters side by side that they have become companions, Their walls are lime-washed, their windows are small. Their gardens are bordered with thyme and lavender and old clay pots turned upside down against the chill. No one seems to be in a hurry. Even the cat asleep on a doorstep has chosen a posture of complete surrender to the evening. At the top of the lane stands a workshop with a curved roof and a wide, round window. Its bricks are warm-toned and uneven, darkened in places by years of kiln smoke. Vines climb one side of it. A fig tree leans over the yard wall, and above the door hangs a painted wooden sign showing a pale crescent moon cradled in two clay-colored hands. The gold lettering beneath it is modest and a little faded. Moonmaker Pottery. From within comes a low amber glow. Not bright, not theatrical, just enough to soften the edges of the doorway and to turn the fogged glass into a warm square against the night. As you step through the gate into the yard, your shoes make the smallest sound on damp gravel. There are shelves beneath the eaves holding bowls upside down to dry. There are shallow trays of clay scraps beneath a bench. There are rain barrels catching moonlit reflections. And there is a long wooden table where a few pale objects rest beneath muslin cloths, their shapes hidden, their outlines round and quiet. The workshop door is already ajar. Inside, warmth meets you at once. Not a fierce heat, only the enveloping warmth of a place where a kiln has been living its slow, red life for many hours. The room smells of clay, cedar shelves, wet stone, ash, tea leaves, and something faintly mineral, almost like the scent of air after a meteor shower. It is a smell both earthly and skybound at once. The floor is old flagstone. The ceiling beams are dark with time. The walls are lined with open shelves, and the shelves are filled with quiet things. Mugs glazed like dawn mist, jars the color of river reeds, bowls with interiors pale as moon milk, little dishes stamped with stars so small they almost seem accidental. And here and there, among the more ordinary wares, you see them. Moons. Some the size of a palm, some as large as platters, some full and round, some fine as crescents, some hanging on ribbons, some resting on small wooden stands, all of them holding the same strange softness, as though they were made not only from clay, but from silence. At the center of the room stands the potter. He is taller than you expected, broad-shouldered, though not imposing. His hair is silver at the temples and tied loosely at the nape. His sleeves are rolled to the elbow. His apron is dusted with clay from chest to hem, and his hands, large and steady and beautiful in their usefulness, are resting lightly on the spinning wheel before him. He looks up as you enter, and his expression carries no surprise, only welcome, as though he had expected you, or at least expected that someone in need of gentleness might arrive tonight. "Good," he says softly. "You're here before the stardust settles too thick." His voice is low, calm, the kind of voice that never pushes ahead of the moment. You are not entirely sure what he means, but somehow, in this room, the sentence feels natural, as though stardust is simply another thing a person might gather, like rosemary or rainwater or good clay. His name, he tells you, is Oren Vale, though in the village most simply call him the Moon Potter. Not because he made up the title, only because, after enough years of sending little ceramic moons into people's homes, gardens, greenhouses, boats, nurseries, windowsills, and workshop shelves, no other name seemed to suit him quite as well. He gestures for you to come closer. On the wheel before him sits a low mound of pale clay wrapped in a damp cloth. Beside it is a shallow wooden tray filled with something that glimmers so faintly you might have taken it for silver sand, if not for the way it seems to hold light even in the shadows. That, Oren says, seeing your eyes go to it, is tonight's Stardust. He says it plainly, not with showmanship, not like a magician protecting a trick, only with the matter-of-fact tone of a baker discussing flour or a gardener discussing loam. And because he says it that way, your mind does not argue. It simply accepts that this village and this workshop and this hour of the evening are places where stardust can be collected in trays and used in pottery. Oren lifts the tray and lets you see more clearly. The dust is not bright like glitter. It is a hush of far subtler than that. It is a hush of silver and pearl and palest blue. When he tilts the tray, it shifts like fine dry silt, and yet now and then one tiny grain catches the lamplight and answers with a soft white glimmer, like a star seen through mist. It falls after still days, he says, and settles best on linen left under open sky. He nods towards the back of the workshop. Come on, we'll fetch the rest before the dew takes it. You follow him through a low doorway into the rear courtyard, then through a small gate in the stone wall. Beyond the wall, the ground slopes gently upward into an orchard. The trees are old pear trees, their branches bent and graceful, their leaves whispering faintly in the night breeze. Between them run lines of washing cord, and from those cords hang wide lengths of linen, pale in the dark, stirred gently by the air. They look like sails waiting for a tide that will never come. Above them, the sky has deepened. The stars are more numerous now, still delicate, still far away, but enough of them that the orchard feels as though it is being watched over from a great, calm distance. The linen cloths have caught something. You can see it now, a faint silvering across their surfaces, a soft powder settled where the cloth dips and folds, not thick, not dramatic, just enough to gather with care. Oren carries a small cedar box tucked under one arm, along with a brush so soft it looks made for dusting butterfly wings. He chooses the first cloth and begins to sweep the powder towards the box with slow, patient strokes. The dust gathers in a line, then a little drift, then a soft, shining crescent in the bottom of the box. He works without hurry, and because he does, you soon find yourself breathing to the same rhythm. Brush, gather, pause, brush again. He hands you another brush. The handle is smooth from years of use. The bristles barely whisper against the linen. As you copy his movements, the stardust lifts and gathers with surprising willingness. Some of it clings to the cloth, some of it slips free at once, and each time it falls into the cedar box, there is a sense, impossible to explain but easy to feel, that you are helping collect something very old and very light and very untroubled. The orchard is almost entirely silent. There is only the rustle of linen, the tiny dry hush of dust being swept, the faint creak of branch against cord. Far off, an owl calls once from beyond the field wall. Then even that sound melts away, and the stillness deepens again. When one cloth is done, Oren folds it carefully and moves to the next. The moon has not yet risen high enough to brighten the orchard fully, so the work happens in a mingling of starlight and the soft lantern glow coming from the workshop window below. The leaves overhead catch the dim light and give it back in small, broken pieces. The grass at your feet is cool and beginning to pearl with dew. Everything here feels touched by quiet. At the far end of the orchard stands a stone bench. On it rests a teapot under a knitted tea cozy and two thick cups waiting upside down on a tray. You had not noticed them when you entered. Oren smiles when he sees you looking. "Tea helps the dust behave," he says. You are not sure whether he means the stardust or the dust inside the mind. Perhaps both. When the cedar box is nearly full, he closes the lid and carries it back to the bench. The tea is still warm. He pours slowly. Steam rises into the night, carrying the scent of chamomile and mint. The cups warm your hands at once. The orchard around you seems even softer now. Linen cloths swaying faintly. Pear leaves turning their pale undersides to the breeze. Stars steady above. The village below almost entirely asleep. You sit on the bench beside Oren and sip in silence for a while. There is no pressure to fill the stillness. It is one of those silences that already feels complete. A finished silence, the kind that invites rather than excludes. After a time, Oren tells you how he learned the work. His grandmother was the village potter before him, not famous, not wealthy, simply beloved. She made bread crocks and soup bowls and wash basins and sturdy mugs for morning tea. But on certain nights, when the air was clear and the cloths in the orchard came back silvered, she made moons. Small ones at first, then larger ones. Not to hang in the sky, of course, only to bring a little of the sky indoors. She said people slept differently when there was a handmade moon nearby. Not because of magic exactly, though she never ruled that out, but because a moon made by patient hands carried patience into the room with it. And a moon made from dust gathered under stars reminded the heart that it belonged to a much larger quiet than the worries of one day. As he speaks, you picture her, a woman with flour on one sleeve and clay on the other, a woman who set linen in the orchard before dusk and checked the sky before bed, a woman who knew the weight of a good bowl, the timing of a kiln, the smell of damp earth, the language of slow work. The image rests in you with surprising ease. When the tea is finished, Oren rises and gives the orchard one last glance. Satisfied, he gathers the folded cloths. You lift the cedar box of stardust. It is lighter than you expect, and yet it feels important. Important in the gentle way of small things carried carefully. Together you walk back down to the workshop, closing the orchard gate behind you. Inside, the lamp glow seems deeper now. The room is warmer. The wheel is waiting. The pale clay mound has been unwrapped. Oren places the cedar box beside it and washes his hands in a bowl of rainwater, gone faintly cloudy from earlier work. Then he cuts the clay in two with a wire and shows you its center. Smooth, dense, cool, holding a memory of riverbed and hillside in its grain. "This comes from the bend in the brook below the meadows," he says. Clay likes water that has taken its time. Again, he says it so simply that it sounds less like poetry than practical truth. He sprinkles a little stardust onto the cut face of the clay, then folds it, sprinkles again, folds again. Silver into earth, sky into river, light into weight. He kneads the clay on the wooden board with the heels of his hands. Push, turn, fold, press. A steady rhythm, strong but never harsh. Soon the stardust disappears into it, not lost, only joined, and the clay begins to show the faintest change, a softness of color, a coolness of tone, as though moonlight had been worked into the body of it. He passes the clay to you. It is cool and supple in your hands, softer than bread dough, heavier than you expect. You follow his instruction and knead it the same way. Push, turn, fold, press. Each movement feels grounding, the sort of task that asks just enough of the body to quiet the mind. It is difficult to think anxious thoughts while clay yields patiently beneath your palms. By the time the clay is ready, your breathing has grown slower without your even noticing. The workshop sounds have become a kind of music. The faint turn of the wheel, the clink of tools in a jar, the far, low hum of the kiln room beyond the wall. Now and then, the soft tap of rainwater dripping from the eaves outside. Everything is small. Everything is sufficient. Oren sets the lump of clay at the center of the wheel and moistens his hands. Then he nudges the treadle with one foot. The wheel begins to turn. Slowly at first, then smoother, then with a quiet, even spin that seems to gather the room around it. He places his hands to either side of the clay, and there is a moment before any shaping begins where all he does is steady it, center it, listen to it through his hands. "This part matters most," he says. "If the clay is unsettled here, it remembers." He does not need to explain further. You understand. Not only about clay, about all things perhaps. If they are unsettled at the center, they carry that restlessness forward. And if they are met patiently at the center, the rest of the making becomes kinder. The clay rises beneath his palms, then lowers, then rises again, narrower, stronger, smoother. The wheel turns, his thumbs press gently, his fingers guide. The mound becomes a rounded form, then a shallow dome, then a wide, elegant disc with a softly lifted rim. Not a plate, not quite a bowl, something between. A moon form, a vessel for light, a place where shadows might sit gently. He works another piece into a crescent, another into a deep dish with a full round face, another into a pair of small, hanging moons no bigger than biscuits, each with a little hole pressed near the top for ribbon. The room begins to fill with them. Freshly made moons resting on boards dusted with fine sand. Moons thin and thick, plain and textured, smooth as milk, softly ridged where his fingers have passed. Now and then, he he lets you take the wheel. Your first attempts are not as graceful. The clay leans, then sags, then wobbles at the edge, but Oren is not interested in perfection. He places his hands lightly over yours and teaches by steadiness rather than correction. Slower, he says. Less force. Let the shape emerge. Do not drag it there. So you try again, and this time the clay listens better. Or perhaps you do. A small moon dish opens beneath your hands. Not flawless, a little lopsided near the lip, but lovely for that very reason, as though it remembers the softness of being made by a real evening, by a real pair of tired hands learning to slow down. Oren nods his approval and sets it among the others with no less care than the best of them. The hours pass gently, not in a blur, not in a rush, but in a sequence of quiet tasks that each seem to belong to the next. Clay is centered, clay is opened, clay is lifted. Moons are cut free with wire and carried to the drying shelves. Some are impressed with patterns from lace. Some are marked with the blunt edge of a twig to create the faint suggestion of craters. Some are brushed with slip so pale it is nearly silver. Each one has its own expression, its own mood, its own hush. When enough moons are shaped, Oren brings out the texture tray. This is one of the loveliest parts. Inside the tray are objects gathered over many years. A fern frond pressed flat, a piece of old netting, a lace cuff, a carved wooden stamp of tiny stars, seed heads, feathers, a shell with a ridged edge, a knitted swatch made by his grandmother and kept soft in tissue paper. With these, the moons are given their quiet surfaces. He presses the lace into one crescent so that it comes away wearing the ghost of its pattern. He rolls a seed head across another, leaving little clustered dimples like constellations half hidden by cloud. He draws the shell edge through slip on a third so the glaze will later settle in silver ripples. Each mark is small, nothing ornate, nothing fussy, only enough to give the surface a memory of touch. You choose a fern for the moon you shaped. Its leaves lie cool and delicate against the clay. When you lift it away, it leaves behind a faint branch of veins, like moonlight caught in plant form. It is beautiful in a quiet way, easy to miss if you looked too quickly, perfect if you linger. Oren places the finished pieces on the long table by the window. There they rest on linen cloths to firm up before glazing. The table becomes a little sky of its own. White moons, silvered moons, pale crescents, soft round dishes, and in the workshop glass behind them, the first true moon of the night has risen, hazy and calm above the orchard trees. For a moment, the maid moons and the sky moon look at one another, and the whole room seems to hold its breath. At last, Oren stretches his back and says it is time for broth. He leads you to the side room where a small iron stove sits beneath a shelf of cookbooks and seed catalogues. A pot has been warming there all evening. He ladles broth into 2 bowls, one for you, one for himself. It smells of leek and potato and thyme. Simple food, the sort that steadies rather than dazzles. With it comes dark bread and a little crock of butter the color of primroses. You sit at a scrubbed wooden table by the stove. Rain taps once or twice against the back window and then stops. The broth is warm and soothing. The bread has a good crust. Everything about the meal feels woven into the work, not a break from the evening, but part of its rhythm. Make, pause, eat, warm, continue. On the shelf above the stove are several finished moons not yet spoken for. Oren takes one down and places it before you. It is a full moon, about the width of both your hands together, glazed in layers of cream and pearl and the palest grey. Its surface is matte in some places, softly shining in others. There are no bright colours, no sharp lines, only a depth that seems to gather more the longer you look. This one was for the schoolhouse reading nook, he says, but the window shelf there turned out smaller than I measured. He smiles. So, now it waits. You hold the moon carefully. It is cool, a little heavier than it looks, and somehow peaceful to touch. You can imagine it in a quiet corner, on a sill, near a child's blanket and a stack of worn books, holding the room still by simply being itself. When the bowls are empty, Oren rinses them and sets them upside down to dry. Then he returns to the workshop table and begins to prepare the glazes. There are several. One in a wide basin that looks like diluted milk with a breath of blue hidden in it. One in a narrow jar, the color of cloud shadow. One in a shallow dish dusted with something silvery, perhaps ground mica, perhaps something stranger. He stirs them with wooden paddles, slowly, until the surfaces go smooth. The glazing happens with the same patience as everything else. Some moons are dipped fully and lifted out shining wet. Some are brushed with long, soft strokes, the glaze settling into the impressed lace and fern veins and shell marks. Some receive only a wash along one edge, leaving the rest of the clay bare and velvety. A few are touched with the silver dust at the final moment. Not enough to sparkle, only enough that later, after the firing, they will seem to remember starlight in their own quiet way. You help by turning the boards and carrying the glazed pieces to the loading shelf. The moons gleam while wet, then slowly dull as they begin to dry. Their beauty becomes subtler, as though the workshop is teaching even shine itself to be gentle. At the far side of the room is a heavy arched door of blackened iron. Behind it lies the kiln room. When Oren opens it, warmth rolls out in a deeper wave, fragrant with old firings, ash, mineral glaze, and brick. The kiln itself is round and brick-built, with a little iron mouth and a stone ledge beside it. Its earlier heat has kept the room cozy all evening. Tonight, it will burn again. Loading the kiln is a ritual of care. Each moon is placed with space around it. No piece touching another, no crowding, no haste. Crescents lean in specially shaped supports. Round moons rest on their edges or lie flat, depending on their thickness. Hanging moons are spaced like biscuits on a tray, though treated with far greater reverence. The shelves disappear into the warm, dark chamber one by one, and with each piece set down, the evening seems to grow deeper and more complete. At last, the kiln is full. Oren closes the iron mouth and fastens the latch. Then he kneels to build the fire in the lower chamber. Not a great roaring blaze, a measured one. Dry apple wood stacked in careful layers. Kindling laid like woven reeds. A strike of flint, a breath. Then a small flame. Then another. Then the gentle catching sound of wood deciding to burn. The fire grows steadily. You sit with Oren on the low bench opposite the kiln and watch the first warmth deepen in the bricks. The light from the vent holes is soft orange at first, then a richer red. Not loud, not fierce. Almost like the kiln is closing its eyes and beginning a dream. There, Oren says. Now the waiting does its work. And so it does. For a long while, there is nothing required but tending. A log added now and then, a vent adjusted, a small note made in the firing book. The rest is time, and heat, and trust. While the kiln warms the moons, Oren shows you the storeroom above the workshop. A narrow stair leads up beneath the roof. The room there is lower and darker, with beams crossing overhead and a round window looking over the village. Along the rafters hang finished moons wrapped in tissue and muslin. On the shelves are ledgers, ribbon reels, boxes of straw, and tiny tags written in Oren's careful hand. Each tag holds a destination: the greenhouse, the shepherd's hut, the clockmaker's workbench, the baby's room on Chapel Lane, the baker's back window, the boat cabin on the mere. It is only then you understand fully. He does not make moons for display alone. He makes them for places, for particular rooms, particular windows, particular lives, each one shaped with some quiet corner in mind. Each one meant not to impress, but to accompany. He unwraps a slender crescent with a faint ribbed pattern. This one is for the seamstress, he says. She works late, and the lamp makes her shoulders tense. This catches the light and softens it. He shows you a small round moon with tiny stamped stars near its rim. For the schoolhouse, he says. Children like to trace the stars while they listen. Then a broad, matte moon with almost no decoration at all. For a widower on the far lane. He said he wanted something plain to keep him company at breakfast. The tenderness of that stays with you. Not grand gestures, not speeches, only a plain moon for a man who eats breakfast alone. How many forms can kindness take, you wonder, before we finally learn to recognize it? At the back of the loft sits an old wicker chair with a folded quilt over one arm. Beside it is a little table holding a tin of oat biscuits and a narrow book of sky sketches made in faded pencil. The round window above the chair frames the village roofs below. Some chimneys breathe the thinnest smoke. The lane shines in moonlight. The orchard cloths, now taken in, leave the trees looking bare and delicate. And above all of it, the night sky stretches clear and deep. Oren says that on winter nights, when the kiln takes longer to reach its proper heat, he sits there in the chair and sketches the moon's changing face. Not because he hopes to capture it perfectly, only because looking long enough makes the mind gentler. Again, he says it simply. Again, it sounds entirely true. You stay in the loft until the bell in the workshop below gives a quiet note, telling Oren the kiln needs checking. Back downstairs, the fire has reached a richer heat. The bricks hum softly with it. He adds another split log, adjusts a vent no wider than a thumb, watches the color through the spy hole, then nods, satisfied. Hours have passed by now, though they do not feel spent. They feel steeped, thickened, made fuller by slowness. Outside, the village has gone entirely still. Even the late windows have darkened. Only the workshop glows. Only the kiln keeps its round, red heart. Only the two of you remain awake in this old, patient building, watching night and clay transform together. To pass the waiting, Oren tells you the stories of a few earlier moons. There was one made for the vicar's mother, who had begun to wake anxiously at 3 each morning. She placed the moon dish on her bedside table and kept lavender in it, and somehow the waking became softer. There was one hung in the greenhouse, so winter seedlings would have a pale companion before dawn. There was one placed in a boathouse after a fisherman's wife said the river felt too dark when he left before sunrise. There was one given to a child afraid of thunder, with the promise that clouds could never truly swallow the moon. None of these stories are dramatic, which is precisely why they settle so deeply. They are stories of care applied in small, exact ways, of someone noticing a corner where gentleness might help, of someone taking the time to make that gentleness by hand. At some point, Oren opens the workshop window a crack. Cool air slips in. The scent of the fig tree and wet stone returns. From far off, so faintly you could almost mistake it for memory, comes the sound of water moving in the brook below the meadows. The kiln continues to glow. The fire continues its careful work. And the contrast between the cool night outside and the warm workshop within becomes one of the coziest feelings in the world. Your eyelids may be heavier now. Your thoughts may be less interested in keeping their shape. If so, let them loosen. Let the story hold itself. You can simply sit by the kiln and listen. To fire settling. To wood giving its little sighs as it burns. To Oren turning the pages of the firing book. To your own breath becoming slower and slower. When the time is right, Oren lets the kiln rest. The fiercest part of the work is done. Now the heat must soften inward. The moons must remain where they are and become what they are becoming without interference. This too is part of the craft, knowing when not to touch, knowing when the best help is to leave a thing in peace. So you do not open the kiln. Instead, Oren spreads a folded blanket on the daybed beneath the round window and invites you to rest there while the cooling begins. He draws another chair near the kiln for himself. The workshop lamps are turned low. The room enters a different kind of hush, one meant for waiting between worlds, before sleep, before dawn, before fired clay becomes what it will be. You lie back. The blanket smells faintly of cedar and sun-dried linen. From where you rest, you can see the table where the tools are lined in a jar, the shelves of bowls and jars and quiet moons, the iron latch of the kiln door holding steady. Oren's silhouette by the firebox, calm and unhurried. And through the high round window, a slice of moon crossing slowly above the fig leaves. Perhaps you drift for a little while, not fully asleep, not fully awake, only floating in that gentle borderland where sounds grow distant and time becomes soft. The kind of drifting that belongs especially to safe places, to warm rooms, to late hours, to stories told in low voices while the rest of the village sleeps. When you open your eyes again, the color of the darkness has changed. The black outside the window has thinned to a deep blue-gray. The stars nearest the horizon are fading. The workshop is cooler than before, though the kiln still gives off stored warmth. Oren is already up, pouring tea into 2 mugs. "Good timing," he says quietly. "They'll be ready." There is a special feeling in a workshop just before dawn. Everything seems truer somehow, stripped of daytime chatter. Tools are only tools. Shelves are only shelves. Hands are only hands. And yet all of it feels more precious for being seen in this quiet hour when the world has not fully resumed itself. You drink the tea while Oren checks the kiln. He rests his hand against the bricks, listens, opens a vent, waits. Then, at last, he lifts the latch and opens the iron mouth. Warmth breathes out. Not fierce now, only deep and fragrant and mineral-rich. Inside, on their shelves, the moons sit transformed. They are no longer damp and pale and waiting. They are whole, finished, set. Their glazes have softened into depth. Their surfaces hold the marks of lace and fern and shell, like memories underwater. The silvered dust has become an inward gleam, not sparkle, not shine, but a stillness of light. They look as though they were made from quiet itself. One by one, Oren lifts them out with gloved hands and places them on padded boards. The crescents are elegant and cool-toned. The round moons have a softness at the rim, like breath on glass. Your own little fern-marked moon is there too, more beautiful now than you expected, its leaf impression faint as a dream, its glaze settling around it in a pale wash of pearl and mist. You smile before you even realize you are smiling. When all the moons are out, the workshop table becomes a new sky. A dawn sky this time, full of cooled moons, large and small, waiting not to be admired, but to be placed where they belong. Oren ties tags to a few with narrow linen ribbon. Others he wraps in tissue and straw. A handful he leaves bare, because they are meant for the workshop shelf, the orchard bench, the greenhouse ledge, the window nook above the bakery. You ask whether they are all ordered in advance. He shakes his head. Some are asked for, he says. Some simply tell me where they want to go. In this room, at this hour, that also sounds like practical truth. The first birds are trying out their voices outside now. One note, then another. The village has not woken fully, but morning is preparing itself at the edges. Oren takes up a wooden tray lined with felt and places several moons upon it. Then he nods toward the door. Come on, he says. Best hour to place them. You step back into the yard. The air is cool and pearly. The fig leaves are beaded with dew. The damp gravel glows faintly in the growing light. And above the rooftops, the sky is paling from ink to soft blue. The moon is still there, but retreating. The world feels suspended between night and day, neither one thing nor the other. The first stop is the greenhouse at the edge of the allotments. Its glass panes are fogged from the warmth within. Tiny seedlings wait in neat rows beneath their labels. Terracotta pots line the bench, and on the narrow shelf above the seed trays, Oren places a crescent moon glazed in pale green-grey with the slightest silver at its tip. At once, the whole shelf seems more settled, as though the seedlings have been given a watchful companion for the dim hours before sunrise. From there, you walk to the schoolhouse. The lane is empty. Only a milk cart far off at the crossroads, and the faint clink of bottles from somewhere behind a cottage. At the schoolhouse, Oren lifts the reading nook moon to the sill beside a basket of worn storybooks and a folded blanket printed with foxes. It belongs there so perfectly that the corner seems incomplete without it, even though it has only just arrived. Next comes the baker's back window. The bakery is already warm and alive inside, though the front has not opened yet. The baker, sleeves rolled and flour on his cheek, sees Oren through the glass and grins. He unhooks the latch, opening just enough to let out a breath of warm yeast and cinnamon. No words are needed at first. Oren simply places a small hanging moon by the window hook above the proving shelf. The baker nods once, pleased, and hands you each a twist of sweet bread wrapped in paper. Then the window closes, and the bakery continues its quiet morning labor. The sweet bread is still warm when you eat it in the lane. Sugar crackles softly at the edge. The dough is buttery and light. It tastes of dawn and ovens and simple generosity. Beside you, Oren chews slowly, as though even breakfast should not be rushed. At the far lane lives the widower who wanted something plain. His cottage garden is small and orderly. Parsley in one bed, nasturtiums in another, a bench by the step. Oren leaves the broad, unadorned moon on the windowsill above the breakfast table, where a checked cloth and a single mug already wait for morning tea. Nothing dramatic happens. No music, no speech. Only a quiet moon set in a quiet place for a quiet man. And somehow, it feels immense. You go next to the boat shed on the mere. Mist still drifts low over the water. The reeds are silver at their tips. A moorhen slips silently between reflections. Inside the shed, coiled rope and old oars smell of lake water and wood and tar. Oren places a narrow crescent above the peg where the lantern hangs. When the fisherman comes in before dawn on colder mornings, the little moon will already be there to meet him. After that comes the clockmaker's workshop. Through the window, you can see rows of patient faces and little brass hands, all waiting for the hour. The clockmaker himself is awake, bent over a bench lamp, spectacles low on his nose. Oren knocks lightly and goes in. He leaves a moon dish no wider than a saucer beside the tools, along with the repaired bell the clockmaker sent yesterday. The old man touches the moon as though testing the smoothness of silence itself, then smiles without looking up. The tray grows lighter. The village grows brighter. Roofs take on color. Chimneys gather soft smoke. A child's curtain stirs. A dog shakes itself awake behind a gate. Morning does not arrive all at once. It unfolds. And because you have spent the whole night in the company of slowness, you notice the unfolding more tenderly than usual. The final moon on the tray is yours. Not to keep, Oren says, to place. He leads you to a bench on the small rise behind the chapel, where the village can be seen between old yew trees and the fields begin beyond the last cottage walls. The bench is stone, warmed already by the first pale touch of coming day. At one end sits a little niche, empty and waiting. That one goes here, Oren says, for whoever climbs the rise when the world feels too much. You set the fern-marked moon into the niche. It rests there easily, as though it always belonged on that stone bench between village and field, between shelter and open sky. Soon enough, someone will sit there. A tired mother after breakfast, a boy with muddy boots and too many thoughts, a postman on his break, an old woman watching weather move over the meadows. Whoever comes, the moon will be there, plainly, patiently, keeping company without asking questions. For a little while, you and Oren stay on the rise. Below, the village wakes by degrees. A gate opens. A bicycle rolls slowly down the lane. The baker turns his sign. The schoolhouse chimney gathers a stronger thread of smoke. And through it all, the moons you helped make are beginning their quiet work, softening corners, settling windows, keeping watch in little places, not changing the whole world, only making it gentler where they can. At last, Oren says it is time to return to the workshop. There are bowls to trim, tea towels to fold, a kiln to sweep once it cools enough. The day's ordinary work is beginning, and yet you know the night's work will remain the truer part of the memory. The orchard cloths, the cedar box, the kneaded clay, the turning wheel, the red kiln, the dawn placements. All of it seems already to belong to that special kind of memory reserved for deeply peaceful things. Back at the workshop, the morning light entering through the round window makes everything look softer rather than sharper. Bowls on the shelf glow honey pale. The tools in their jar cast small, neat shadows. The bench by the door still holds a silver trace where stardust brushed from your sleeve and was not yet swept away. The room feels tired in the most satisfying way, not worn out, simply used well. Oren hangs his apron on the peg and puts the kettle on once more. The final mugs of tea are taken standing by the open door, looking out into the yard where the fig leaves move in the mild morning air. The rain barrels now hold blue sky instead of stars. The long table beneath the eaves smells faintly of damp linen and warm clay. And the village beyond the wall is awake enough now that you can hear the first ordinary sounds of daytime life. A cartwheel, a greeting, a distant latch. Nothing about Oren suggests that he considers the night unusual. This is simply his work. This is simply how he lives. He gathers what the sky leaves behind. He mixes it into the earth. He shapes it slowly. He fires it with patience. Then he places the finished quiet into the world where it might help. There is something deeply reassuring in knowing that such a person exists, even if only inside a story. At the threshold, before you go, Oren hands you a very small object wrapped in tissue. When you open it, you find a moon no larger than a coin. Simple, plain, only the faintest silver line along one edge. For a pocket, he says, or a bedside table, or nowhere in particular. You thank him. He only nods, as though gratitude is natural but unnecessary between people who have shared a kiln night. You leave the workshop and step back into the lane. The day has fully arrived now, but softly. Clouds move like brushed wool above the chimneys. The air is cool and clean, and tucked in your hand, the tiny moon feels smooth and settled, and somehow very old. You walk downhill past the cottages, past the herb pots, past the cat now awake and washing one paw in the sun. Everything looks almost ordinary, and yet not quite. As though the night has shown you the hidden patient work beneath the surface of things. You know now that while villages sleep, stardust can gather on linen, that careful hands can center clay the way a tired heart longs to be centered, that fire can change what is shaped with patience into something quietly luminous, that small objects placed in the right corners can alter the feel of an entire room. And perhaps, most comforting of all, that gentleness can be made, not merely hoped for, made. So now, if you are still awake, let the story begin to settle around you. Let the lane grow softer. Let the workshop lamp dim. Let the orchard cloths drift more faintly in your mind. Let the wheel slow. Let the kiln rest. Let the moons find their places and keep them. You have gone far enough for one night. You do not need to remember every shelf or every glaze or every stop on the dawn round. You can let the details loosen. You can let them become texture rather than fact. Warm bricks, cool clay, silver dust, slow hands, a rising moon, a bench above the village. That is enough. Feel again the workshop warmth around your shoulders, the smooth, damp clay in your palms, The soft brush passing over linen in the orchard. The hum of the wheel beneath steady hands. The first red glow in the kiln. The cool, pearly air of dawn on the lane. The little moon resting in your pocket. All of it quiet. All of it slow. All of it asking nothing from you now, except that you rest. Take one easy breath in and let it go. Another slow breath in and let that go too. And one more, soft, unforced, gentle. If there is anything from the day still sitting heavily in you, imagine placing it now on Oren's workbench. Not to be solved, not tonight, only set down. Perhaps it is a worry, perhaps a conversation, perhaps a question with no good answer yet. Set it there anyway. Let it rest on the wood among the tools and glaze bowls and cedar dust box. Now imagine Oren taking that burden and treating it as he treated the clay. Not with alarm, not with irritation, only with patient hands, centered first, steadied, then shaped slowly into something that no longer presses so sharply against you. Maybe it becomes smaller, maybe softer, maybe just more bearable. That is enough. And if there is some part of you that feels unsettled at the center, let the turning wheel help with that too. See it spinning. Hear its low, steady hum. Feel those calm hands at either side of the clay, not forcing, only guiding, until what leaned begins to center, until what felt rough begins to smooth under warmth and water and time. Now picture the orchard once more, the old pear trees, the linen cloths hanging still beneath stars, the silver dust gathered so lightly across them. Imagine your thoughts becoming like that dust, no longer heavy, no longer clinging, only fine and drifting and easy to brush into a cedar box and set aside until morning. Picture the kiln now, closed, warm, its work complete. Inside it, everything that needed transforming has already transformed. Everything that needed time has been given time. Everything that needed heat has had enough. And now there is nothing more to do, only to let it cool, only to let it become. Perhaps you can do the same. You do not need to keep working on yourself tonight. You do not need to improve anything before sleep comes. You do not need to untangle every feeling. You do not need to reach some perfect state of calm. You can simply rest in the unfinishedness, in the cooling, in the quiet after effort. Imagine the little moons now in all their places. One in the greenhouse above the seedlings, one in the reading nook by the books, one above the bakery window catching the first flower-bright morning light. one in the boathouse over the lantern peg, one by the widower's breakfast mug, one on the rise behind the chapel where anyone tired may sit, and one tiny moon, perhaps, near you now, on a bedside table, in a pocket, in the palm of your hand. They are not loud things. They do not fix the whole world. They do not erase sorrow or answer every question. They simply keep company. And sometimes that is the deepest comfort. Not a grand solution, only a quiet presence. Something made with care. Something willing to stay. So let this story keep you company a little longer. Let Cedric's voice become softer in the room of your mind. Softer and lower and farther away, like the last warmth from a kiln after the fire has gone down, like the last glow from a workshop lamp seen through misted glass, like the last silver trace of stardust on a folded cloth before dawn. Your body knows what to do now. It knows how to grow heavy. It knows how to sink. It knows how to soften into the mattress, into the pillow, into the blanket, into the quiet. You do not need to direct it. You only need to stop asking anything of it for a while. The room around you is safe. The night around you is gentle. The story has done its work. The moons have found their homes. The kiln is cooling. The orchard is brightening. The workshop door is open to morning. And you too can let yourself come to rest. If thoughts return, let them pass through like early birds over a village roofline. Seen, heard, then gone. No need to follow. No need to hold them. Just let them cross the sky of the mind and disappear into distance. And if feelings rise, let them be like rainwater in the yard barrels, still, reflecting what is above them, not demanding anything, not spilling over, just holding quietly until light changes. Now let the workshop grow farther away, the rod window, the bench by the stove, the soft hum of the wheel, the cedar box, the tea in the orchard, the red kiln, the dawn lane, the village rise, all of it drifting gently back into story distance, not lost, only softening. You can rest now. You can let the making continue without you. You can let the moon potter gather his cloths and sweep his floor and open his windows to the day. You can let the little moons keep watch in their corners. You can let the village wake and carry on. None of it requires your attention. All you need to do is drift. Drift the way stardust drifts onto linen under a clear sky. Drift the way steam rises from tea in the orchard. Drift the way dawn slips into the lane without a sound. Drift the way sleep approaches when one is standing in its way. Take one last easy breath in and let it go very slowly. And another. And now simply rest. Sleep gently, sleep deeply, and let the last little moon in the workshop window grow softer and softer in the distance, until it is only a pale circle in blue dawn, and then only a feeling, and then not even that. Only stillness, only softness, only rest. Good night.